Top of the morning to you, YouTubers. I got a little change of pace today. Normally I'm working on smaller stuff like my bike or this side-by-side or something, but I've got this 2001 GMC 3500 dually. It's actually got a newer bed on it. Trust me, it's an older one based on the front end. I put that bed on a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And this guy, I use a lot of his equipment and he helps me out with some stuff. So he told me it needs rear brakes. This is totally sight unseen, but I used to work on these every day 10 years ago, a little more than that. But I've done about, I don't know, 50 of them probably. So I have a pretty good idea of what to expect, even though I didn't get to inspect it first. And the thing is, to really inspect these brakes, it's kind of a lot of work to take it apart. So if you're hearing a noise and you think you're going to want to tackle this job, I'm going to tell you probably everything you should get. And I've done maybe one or two since I was doing them every day, and it seems like they're pretty much still same old things are failing. So it's not worth resurfacing these rotors. It's very difficult to get a brake lathe that will fit this size hub with this huge offset. So if it, I'd recommend just replacing the rotors. You're gonna get a better outcome. I mean, that's a hard rotor to resurface on a lathe. It's not that it can't be done, it's just a pain in the butt. I found this kit on Amazon, rotors and pads, and they look pretty decent quality, and it was like a couple $100. So just cheap. And it comes with shims, and they're semi-metallic, but mostly ceramic, so they'll probably be pretty good. And then that's normal, right? Every car needs that crap. The problem with this one is these are notorious for having these hub seals leak. And I call them hub seals because they are hub seals. We could call them axle seals. Everybody's gonna call them axle seal. I'll even call them axle seal sometimes. But this has a full floating rear axle, and it's very different than 1500 or your typical F-150, a Ranger, a Colorado, a Tacoma, a Tundra. It's just this is bigger stuff. So you're looking at probably the 1-ton trucks, and some 2500 trucks are gonna have something like this, especially if it's a dually. So these literally, I wouldn't even get the brake parts unless you get these hub seals, because they were trash. A lot of times I noticed the brakes would outlast the hub seal. The hub seals are kind of funny. It's more of a two-piece design. Can't totally tell, but the inner part spins separate. I can get it to move. So I don't know. This is like a Dana, part. So whatever. They're not good, and they're not really unique to GM, by the way. But I would recommend OEM. I don't know that I would say that you need OEM everything else, but for the seals, I would definitely go OEM. And then the axle gaskets, get those. These are cheap. These aren't really that much money either. And then if you're going to go in there, I would get your parking brake shoes. So yes, this has disc brake pads and parking brake shoes. And that's a rotor, but it has a drum surface on the inside for the parking brake only. And then because we're going to be going into that diff, you're going to want to have some gear lube, like some 75/90. I've got some over there because it may be low. So here's a few things to look for that I've seen a bunch of times. If you roll under here, first off, I've got it lifted up. I've got it jack stands. I've got all that stuff. It's not sitting on the jack. Look right here at this parking brake pin, that little round circle right there, right in the center screen. If you see one of those covered in oil, that's your sign that those hub seals will be leaking. But again, they leak very commonly. You may want to do a visual inspection on your calipers because those leak from time to time as well. But I would say all that stuff I got is kind of like your minimum. Now, if you look, this parking brake cable goes in right there, and there's a mechanism inside that's known to get rusted and stuck and damaged. So this parking brake pedal is very low to the floor. So I'm going to say more than likely I need to do a pretty extensive adjustment, but the adjustment's actually inside. And probably the reason it's out of adjustment is because the shoes are worn. So it's getting all new stuff. So let's do your visual inspection. But again, it's kind of a pain in the butt to really get in there. If you're going to do the job, I'm going to show you how to do it with the absolute minimal tools. All right, wheels off. So if you haven't seen one of these, this is your major challenge. This rotor is held on by this hub right here. We got to pull these bolts out to pull the axle out to access the hub nut, and that's where you set the bearing preload. And then we've got to pull the rotor out. It's going to be a big pain in the butt, but that's because this is a heavy duty truck. So also, that's the reason why he needs brakes right there. Squealer's touching. I don't really see any signs of the hub seals leaking, but again, now that you can see a little bit better, if I'm going to pull all that stuff apart, that hub seal is gonna be junk by the time I pull this apart. So it's going to be new when we put it back together. And somebody did a pretty good job working on this one, because usually these axle seal gaskets are leaking and they got it all siliconed up. So I'm going to scrape the silicone, change it over to a gasket, but I see a lot of times those gaskets get reused and they end up leaking. So continue. All right, first thing I do on these, put my screwdriver right in here. I'll show you a little close up real quick with a big shadow. So I'm gonna go right about here. Real tough to get light seeing there. And I'm basically just gonna hook this screwdriver in the rotor slot so that it'll hit the caliper. Start working the caliper out. So I'm actually in the center of the rotor. Real tough to see. I'm not touching the brake pad, which, these brake pads are getting changed anyways. It's not that big of a thing. But there's your pad. There's the little tiny bit of lining left. If we wanted, we could even pry a little bit right there. But it's better to put it here, start to pry it. And it's going to be a little tough. And I'm probably going to grab a bigger screwdriver here, because I grabbed a relatively small one. And I'm just going to start working this. This is compressing our caliper piston. And if this is really excessive, it could be because you got caliper piston seizing up. Alright, bigger screwdriver now. So you'll watch this piston. This caliper is going to start to slide outboard towards your left. This one's a little tough, but it is moving. I'm going to keep working it. Alright, so with quite a bit of prying, even a little from a different angle, I feel like I got them pretty well compressed. Now, next crappy part. We're going to get this caliper off, but it's going to take a lot of leverage, and the problem is if you put a socket on here and you start running it, you're going to back up into the leaf spring. So the best thing I can tell you to use an 18 millimeter ratcheting wrench. If you don't have one, use an 18 millimeter regular wrench. Alright, so see how it feels here. I don't recommend doing a whole lot of beating with your hand, like the meat hammer, because I actually have some spots I've hurt over the years from doing that, but I'm kind of trying to do a get her done. Otherwise, you could do, like for this bottom one, what I'll do, just to show you, get the 18 on the breaker bar. In fact, the bottom one, less of a big deal because we got more access. So I could actually just impact it off. And I might, but for a demo, a nice long breaker bar, like this is a 24-inch. Gonna save a whole lot of joint problems and little, like this little bone spur type of things from slamming the wrenches in a couple of my fingers. So those two are loose. Let me get them all the way out. Alrighty. So here's what's kind of funny. See, that bolt won't come out all the way, but we can get the lower one out all the way. Swing this one up. And get it out, but you know, it looks like it can't, which is not really that big of a thing. But these bolts are actually the guide pins. I'm gonna set them up out of the way. We're gonna make sure we lube those up really good. If you were doing just a brake pad swap, you could pivot this caliper up, pull the pad, But I'm doing rotor, and I'm doing the whole, I'm really doing the job the way it should be done. So what I need to do is go into these inner bolts, which you can likely see. If I put it like that. You can probably see the bottom one easy. Here, these 21 millimeters. And those suckers are freaking tight. And from the factory, they got a ton of Loctite on them. So, I have very fond memories of these bolts. So, here we go. That felt like probably like 150 foot-pounds. Break loose. So with these, same thing, you can't, there's not enough room on the upper to do a ratchet. So I'm gonna crack it loose with the breaker bar, which just barely fits. In fact, it doesn't exactly fit, which is why I brought the big 21 millimeter wrench. If I can't get it with the 21, I'm gonna double wrench it. Yep, definitely not. All right, come on out here. Let me show you what I got. That's tight. So, new plan. All right, so that one sucks. I'm gonna put my 21 on it. I'm gonna take my 22, double wrench it, which is a little hard to stabilize, but it's gonna work all right. Or could take your 21 socket and grind it down to make the breaker bar fit back there. These ones are gonna suck. I'm gonna let you know right now. Okay. All right, so that one's loose. I'm gonna get it out here. Nothing but the best. All right, so when you get those out, you do a little bit of a dance. I personally would recommend leaving the lower bolt in, letting the caliper slide down, the bracket slide down a little, so you can slide the caliper out. Then hold it, don't let it drop with the hose connected. It'll mess the hose up. Then set it really securely on the leaf spring. Then you can take that last lower caliper bracket nut off, which is still a little too tight for my hands. All right, so next big challenge. Caliper bracket and caliper are off. We'll have to do quite a bit of prep to that caliper, but what we really got to do is pull this axle. So that's 18 millimeter. Just get an impact them off. You got it right here. They're not crazy tight, but it's gonna help to have an impact because it's gonna try to spin otherwise. You know what? I thought they were 18s. They feel like a little bigger. Those 21s might be 19s. Guess my memory's not that good. They're 19s. Gotta get a new socket. All right, easy, pretty standard type of procedures. Pop them out. See a little bit of silicone flying because they didn't use a gasket last time. They did a RTV job on it. One more to go. Now, right below this, you might want to put a drain pan because some oil's gonna come out. Also, see this silicone on the end? That's why I prefer to use the gasket. The silicone's just messy. So I'll have to go through and like kind of clean these up, get any silicone stuff off of there. And then this might take a whack to get loose, but it won't take much. So I put a little cardboard. I brought a little paper towel. The paper towel may not be enough, but it usually is. So I'm just literally pulling this whole axle out. I keep another one in my hand or a rag to kind of wipe it as I pull it. Okay, now I gotta go stand this axle up. And I'll have to, that's the other reason I hate the silicone. The silicone's a mess down here. So if it's a gasket, just less prep. To me, a better outcome. So stand the axle up someplace. And it's not really tough. Now, let's get up and personal in here. So, I've kept my hands pretty clean on purpose. It's not like any bragging rights if you get dirty, if you ask me. But the next step, we got to deal with this bearing and retainer. So I'm going to get as much light on the subject as I can. And we'll take a zoom in real quick. So right, that orange thing right there is a retaining clip. And I've got to get that off. So I'm going to try to do this all while holding the camera. So all I'm doing is just working this out a little. Right, take that clip, keep it someplace. Next step, there's a little keyway, square stock key right here. Keep that. Next, and this part's where it gets a little more technical. If you follow the service manual, you need a special service tool that's like a spanner socket to grab those. It's like there's going to be little pegs that are going in those little holes, and that's to set the bearing preload out here on the hub. But what we're going to use is your typical basic needle nose. So again, I'm showing you minimal tools here. I'll do like a wide grip and then catch the holes and just turn it out. And then once you get it a little more loose, you can just needle nose it. I know it seems kind of crazy, but I see no reason for that tool. If anything, it's going to be a little tougher to set the preload without the tool. But I worked in the dealership and we did these every day. I learned them from my mentor without the special tool. I've seen the special tool, but I've never used the special tool. So now that that's out, this whole hub and rotor and everything's about to fall out. So let me pause and get a spot for it. All right, next stage. We just gotta go ahead and pull that baby off. It might make a little bit of a mess, but I got a home for it over there. Obviously, make sure your parking brake and everything is released. I can feel it. This one's stuck on the shoes. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna go straight down, dump a little, and then I've pre-set up a place right over here. I'm gonna show you. See, that seal just ripped in half, and that's what they normally do. All right, so off the drum set. I don't think you can see it on screen, but I'm gonna show you. So this is half of the seal. That seal's trash now. And those shoes are a little worn. They don't look terrible. Didn't look like the seal was leaking. This is actually pretty good. But like what I was trying to explain, if you're just gonna pad slap it, you don't need that seal. But if you're gonna pull the hub and rotor and stuff, you need a new seal at a minimum. So that's what we got left. I gotta rip the seal off right here. And then here's the inside. So the other half of the seal is right here now. And then the bearings are in there. So I got a seal puller. I'm gonna pull that seal out. And then we've actually got to drive the studs out with an air hammer to get this rotor loose. So this is what I use right here. Seal puller like this. And then air hammer. Alright, so I bought this one actually because it's adjustable. I can pull that pin and change the angle. From what I remember, I think I just do this one straight. So I've got it hooked. I kind of step on it. It'd really be a lot easier with two hands. Crack it loose. Okay, seal's removed. Now, I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to get some more paper towels. I might even go for a full-on rag. And I've got to drive those studs out. But I guess I could pop the seal off the housing right now, too. So this one, I'm just trying to pull, but you know, I don't remember how I was getting this one off in the past. There's a little area to pry against. Yeah, that's right. Right there. So it's kind of it's a press fit. I don't know, full-on press fit, but more or less. So there you go. That's off now. I'm gonna clean this up in a bit, but that's gonna be after I do these parking brake shoes. So let me flip that drum over, that rotor slash drum slash hub. All right, here we go. Actually, I'm gonna grab the bearing out before I flip it. Otherwise, the bearing's gonna fall out. And we'll keep that bearing nice and clean. Don't put it in a dirty place. Now, you'll notice some oil ran out. It's not that big of a thing. It's getting on that rotor because I'm changing it. But I do like to keep a clean workspace. Just put that there. Now, I'm gonna do one from a distance, and then I'll show you what I'm doing. Fingers, compressor kicks on. Check this out. So these have been done a few times, but you gotta land it right on the stud. You could do this with a hammer, but you risk messing up the threads a little bit more. So I prefer the air hammer. You ready? We'll zoom in a bit. Right there. Yeah. All right. Do that another 6 times. All right. All 8 of them are out. So next step, we're just gonna lift this hub, and that's why I keep calling this a hub, right off of that rotor. So you go, set that down. Now we're gonna get rid of this rotor. Yes, get that way out of the way. All these studs are gonna get driven back in to that hub with the new rotor. And I was gonna clean this rotor up because it comes with, you know, like a little oil coating on it from the factory, but by the time I get it all clean and then get that hub reinstalled with the seal and everything, I'll need to clean it again. I'm gonna skip the cleaning. All right, so here we go. The way that hub's gotta go, we gotta get it sitting on here, like this, right? So I'm gonna walk you through this. Given I'm a little rusty, I haven't done this in a long time. That's how it's got to go, right? That's how it came apart. The problem is we need to get the studs in the inside. So what we really need to do is flip it over. Not that big of a thing. Just for the visual. And I'm going to steal a piece of this paper towel to set the hub on rather than set it in that dust I just made. Keep it relatively clean. So it's sitting on there. Take a stud. Come with me. Drop a stud in. Okay, and then the thing to do with these studs is to give it a little turn like this and feel where the splines are. So that way it doesn't have to cut its way into a new spline. It's more just got to line up with the old spline. All right, so I got 2 of them. In fact, I'll set them all. And then we're just gonna air hammer them. All right, 8 in and set. Now, a couple options here. I'm just gonna go ahead and use the same point, but I have another one that's wider, that's a little bit nicer. And if you didn't have the air hammer, you could use a drift and a sledge. I'd probably say it'd be best to use a brass drift. Same to get them out. A brass hammer or a brass drift would be sweet. So we're gonna go ahead and set these down a little. I'm sure this noise is gonna suck on your computer or device or whatever. So I kind of like to work them down a little bit at a time. But I'm going to just keep doing what you see until they're totally seated. All right, so these ones are going a little harder than I remember. I changed over to my wide bit, and it helped. But instead, I blocked it up on 2x4s, and I've got this drift that I've used for this. I lay it right here, and then I'm gonna smack it. The nice dead blow. Not a soft tip dead blow, but a metal, dead blow. Not a lot of bounce back. You need a lot of hits. That one's close. So that's what I'm doing, just going around and kind of in a star pattern, hit them all down, drive them really flush. All right, that's enough even to get me out of breath a little bit. So they're all down and flush. As you're hitting them down, you'll notice it'll kind of change pitch when it really bottoms out. So it's now bottomed out. Here's what we got to do though. If there's any junk in here, clean it up now. And we got to take our bearing, lay the bearing in there. Feels good. Those bearings could go bad, I suppose, but I don't really see them go bad. And then I'm going to do a wipe up right here of that sealing surface, because that's where our seal's got to go right now. All right, so on this seal, on that inner lip right there, I'm going to recommend you lube it up just a little. I just reached into the hub and I got some oil, some just regular gear lube that is the natural fluid that's in there. I don't recommend using grease. I guess you probably really could, but I personally don't. I recommend using the gear oil. That's what's going to touch it anyway. And we're going to lay it in there, and you'll notice it's not going to go down. That's fine. So we got to tap it down nice and easy here, which I may really need my hand. So let me try to see if I can get a spot where I can set the camera. Okay, that might work. So I got to hold it. Okay, and then I'm just going to drive it evenly. Now the camera's in the way kind of, but with the hammer handle, this works pretty good. So again, I'm sure there's a seal driver for this job, but this is what I've done with a lot of success. And every tool you don't have to buy kind of saves money, Okay, so I'm just going to drive it down flush, but I really need the camera out of my way. You get the idea. In fact, I did want to share. Here's what I'm doing right now. You won't be able to see great, but I'm actually going to take that same drift. I'm going to turn it upside down. Just seat this baby. That's seated. There's that. I'm just doing it in a little circle. I'm not hitting it any harder than I have to because I don't want to damage it. Then as a preemptive measure, get some more of that little gear lube. I'm going to lube this hub surface a little more. Because in a second when we slide that back on, it's going to engage this right here. So that needs to be cleaned up. Maybe a little bit of a waste of time because I'm going after those shoes, but while I'm on the subject, I want to finish what I'm talking about. So I'm going to clean that up. Could even put a little grease on it. If it's anything I'm doing with rubber, silicone grease is my go-to, like 100% silicone, brake lube or something. But I'm just going to do the same gear lube like this, right here. And then right now, that one's ready to go on. But the problem is I'm going to change these park and brake shoes while it's all apart. All right, so got to totally admit, been a long time, so I don't really have a great memory of these shoes, but I'm gonna yank them out in a way that I think makes sense. Go for the hold downs. I'll do the one you can see better. I'm kind of compressing this little spring, and I'm going to twist that pin 90. All right, and I can pull the hold down spring. I'm not trying to pull any of the return springs quite yet. Same thing over here. Get those let go. All right, and then I'm just going to spread this out from the mechanism that applies it, and then try to assemble it down on the ground. Is my plan. I think is a good plan. And if not, if this spring gives me a hard time, it's not really that tough to get it out. So I may change my mind right now. Oh, actually it is kind of a funny spring. So yeah, I'm going to keep that spring on there. Just gotta spread it wider. Okay. One side and the other side. Alright, so there's our baby right there. Set it on my pre-made up paper towels here. I had that cardboard, but too much oil on it. So I'm going to do it like that because I'm going to lay the new shoes right in there and swap everything over directly. So please hold. Let's try to do this together here. So first thing, I'm going to take this and kind of roll it up. In fact, I'm probably going to try to not move that adjuster because the more I could contract it and be easier to get this apart, but that's just going to make me more time to adjust it. So I'm kind of looking on the back side at how that spring works and get a pretty good idea. And what I think I'm going to do is try to spread it and just kind of get this, just kind of try to get this adjuster off its track like that. All right. Move it, set it there. Bingo. Next spring, set it there. Next spring, and that was that spring that was a little more funny. Okay, there we go. Get rid of that shoe. Get rid of this shoe. It would have made sense to do a lot of this cleaning before taking apart, but I'm gonna actually clean it when it's together. I guess as far as the result to the customer makes no difference. Just mean that my floor would have stayed a little cleaner maybe. That spring is funny, I'm telling you. Weird shape. Gotta have it just right to get it out. See that? Okay, just like that. Okay. Now, I had pre-laid them exactly how they were. So, this is gonna go through the front like this. Okay, like that. This is going to go through the front. Kind of like that. Okay. Like I said, I don't really remember this particularly well. Now is a good time to get this adjuster cleaned up though. So I'm going to look and say there's about 3 threads. I'm actually going to probably take a little time to grease this baby. All right, but I'm gonna leave it there for a second. Now I'm gonna hook this one right where it went here. There's no real way to get great lighting, to be honest. Just like these. So check that out real quick. Spring, 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 spring. But the adjuster's not in. So let me grab the right grease for that. Alright, so this could really use to be like soaked, but actually it's just really not that bad, which is cool. It's better than the stuff I was working in the East Coast. It's California here. Alright, so just a little grease on there. Probably spin it this way. Get it. Now there's some debate. Some people would say absolutely no grease because it's going to collect the dirt. But my experience has been if you don't grease it, it ends up rusty. And I'd rather have dusty than rusty, personally. So now that that's greased, I think you can mostly see. I'm going to try to fight it back into its spot, but I have a little bit of grease on my fingers, so try to not get this thing contaminated. And now I'm just using the juice here. Okay, pre-assembled shoes. And the next thing that I'd like to actually do is up here. There's a couple little support pads. And I'm gonna wipe them up. Those are the points where the shoes ride. So I'm actually going to spray this real quick and grease them. All right, so you can see a lot cleaner. But just a little swipe of grease on those support pads will make it so when the parking brake's applied and released, it's not going to creak. Okay, tough to see a couple of those. But now I'm ready to get these shoes back on. And I gotta say, it's going to be very difficult to do this while filming. So I'm going to try to get in a weird position. Try to do it with the camera here. Maybe it's going to be tough because now I cannot really reach that well. But I think I can do this. So clean hands, get the spring ready, and the spring ready. Get the pins pushed through. Whoops, looks like I pushed one of the pins out. Must have got stuck back there. Shoot. So, see, it was right here, but it's not. Well, let me figure that out. All right, there's that pin. So, I'm going to get that back in there from the back side. Might as well get familiar with where the pins land on the back side because you're probably going to have to hold them. All right, now, if I've got the strength I had when I started, I should be able to land this in the little mechanism down here, but it's going to be a little tough. Oh, yeah, the other way. Start on this side. Start on this side. Can you still see? Kind of. All right, it won't be as close up, but I really just, I need to get a little better space in here. It's not a real tough job, but it takes coordination, and when the phone is in the way, it just frustrates everything. So I've landed it in the left side on the bottom, and now I'm going to stretch the right side over. Get rid of the light, it's kind of blinding me. Just looking to get it right where it was when we took it off. Easier said than done, though. I'll tell you that for sure. Luckily, there's no wheel cylinder or anything to deal with. Okay. I think I got that one. Well, maybe not quite. All right, now I did. All right, let's take a good look here. So, in on the left side like that, and on the right side, back behind, but this little mechanism has to be sitting on the shoe right there. So make sure you get that. It really wasn't that difficult. And you could play with the adjustment a little. I'm kind of thinking I'm going to run a little tight. But also right here, there's this hole. You see my finger is there? That's where we're going to do our final parking brake adjustment. But for now, I've got to get the pins through. So again, we'll get a little bit of a back seat view here. One pin through. In fact, I might as well just go ahead and try to land the clip on there. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to use these pliers again. I'm going to go in. I might have to reposition a little. I'm using my left hand behind the backing plate to spin the pin. So I'm trying to line the pin up right now. And once I do, I'm going to grab it with the needle nose pliers. I really wish I could have held the camera that well, but I compress the clip, and then when it's compressed far enough, grab the pin and then twist it. Boom. So you end up landing 90 degrees off like that. I'm going to try to get you to be able to see that on this one, but it's definitely tough. We're kind of trying to occupy the same space here. So maybe. All right, the pin is here. Kind of in a weird spot. Want it to be there. That's through right there. Bring over the clip. The hold down clip. Wherever it is. Okay, it's right there. Okay, here's the magical moment. I really feel like I'm going to block your view, but you want to be part of my film crew? Okay, down and twist. Boom. Actually, I got to twist a little more. Let me show you. So it's not, you want it like 90 off. It kind of lays in there like that. Okay, parking brake shoes are officially on. Are they adjusted? Don't know. There are tools to measure here to here so that you can actually measure the inner diameter of the drum inside the rotor, and then you can actually do a pre-adjustment. But I'm going to say my adjustment's probably pretty close. And if it doesn't fit, I'm going to pop it back off and turn it down. And if it fits easily, I may pop it down and turn it off. Otherwise, I'll just put it on, and then we'll go through that hole I was showing you. Down in there. Right there where my finger is. We'll go through there and we'll do the final adjustment. So, next step, get the rotor, caliper. Okay, here we go. The freaking rotor and hub and bearing and seal on that whole big assembly. So you're just gonna stay right there. I'm gonna get rid of the shoes. Just chuck the shoes out of the way. Bring over the big baby. Okay, and that one, I did do a cleanup on this. I'm just going to give it another little final. And you need to do it with a chemical, not just wiping, because there's oil on it. Okay, when I did the vacuum plate, I cleaned it up. Okay, here comes the big baby. All right, we got to slide it in. Get our shoes so where they look like they're relatively center. I'm lifting with my arms right now. Feels like I'm pretty close, but I'm also seating the seal right now. I actually think I've got the parking brake shoes just a little too tight, so I could do a sneak peek adjustment right here. Turn them down a little. Don't do that. That is not working. Let me get that locked in there a little better. Sneak adjustment. Okay, it feels like it might be a little better now. Yeah, it's still maybe just a touch tight. Okay. So, here we go. Now, I just gotta lift. Should be fairly close. It's work though, I'm telling you now. It is labor. And now, the next step, that's where it gets a little technical. I'm going to clean this retainer up. I'm going to set my spring right there. Okay, when I clean this retainer, I got to get it started by hand. This is the technical part. Okay, now I'm going to spin it up. Okay, and this is the part where everybody's going to do a little different. There is a torque spec on this, which is why they'd say you need the special tool. More than anything, getting it off, not so difficult, but torquing it to spec without the special tool, not going to be able to do that. However, I'm literally going to show you exactly what I've done many, many times, with no comebacks, by the way. So, not for this at least. So I'm tightening this. I'm gonna get this basically as tight as I can get it. And where I've seen people get thrown off is it's starting to get tight already, so they stop because it wasn't that tight when they took it off. But the reason it's getting tight early is because we're driving the seal onto that axle hub or whatever right there that I pulled the inner seal off of. So this is basically seating the seal for us. Okay, as tight as I can get it. That's too tight. I'm gonna back it off. How much? Well, we'll see. I'm gonna try to back it off. Okay. I'm gonna back it off till it's loose. And I'm just gonna barely snug it. And maybe then back it off to the nearest hole. So get it tight. Back it off till it's loose. That's gonna have the seal seated, and then tighten it up pretty tight and back it off till you line the hole up. See that hole or that square channel? Actually got to go a hair clockwise here. Okay. So now that square is lined up. I feel like I got the parking brakes a little tight, but you know what? It's going to be sweet because the parking brake's going to work really good. And they're probably going to wear in a little bit. Might make a little smell at first, but it's going to be sweet. And then take our key and then slide the key in. And by the way, if I'm unhappy with the parking brake shoes, remember, go in the back and I could do that adjustment. So the key's in there now. Now the last thing I really need to do is get this retainer on there. So the little drop down part right here, that blocks the key. Oops. So make sure that's going to block the key. And then the other part, you just kind of stretch it out and it'll get kind of locked on the threads. Okay, and right there is the money. So the next step, because this was siliconed, I got to do some gasket prep. So actually the silicone came off pretty good. I might just have to do a little bit more. And then same thing on the axle shaft. Gasket prep is the best. All right, get this a little cleaned up. I'm gonna scrape it probably with a little razor blade. Get it clean. Then we're gonna put the gasket on. All right, gasket, drop it on there. And then I'm gonna just slide this axle shaft back in. You feel it hit the side gear, the differential right there. Got to kind of pick it up a little, tilt it, and get it splined. Then, when you get it closer, you may not be able to turn the axle. You'll turn the hub a bit, get your holes lined up, and then I got some bolts that are ready. Okay. Okay, get at least a couple in there, and then make sure that if there was silicone on there, get silicone off of it because it'll bottom out in the hole if there's too much silicone, and then you won't get a good torque. And then I'm just going to put the other axle bolts in right now and draw this in, and that gasket will seal it. So this seal seals the spinning hub, and this is really just an axle gasket. They do leak. They both fail, but the hub seal fails the most. All right, so with them in for now, just buzz them up. We'll do a final torque with it on the ground. It's just too much of a pain to try to like put a pry bar in here and hold the hub and torque them. So when I get it down, I can do the torque on it. Don't forget to do that. Then the next step is going to be to get this caliper bracket on. But remember, when we got the caliper bracket off, we couldn't get the caliper guide pin bolt out. So you gotta do that same song and dance, but in reverse. You gotta sort of have the caliper bracket with one bolt already in it, and then kind of fight with the shoes and stuff. So that part's gonna suck. All right, so prepping the caliper bracket's pretty easy. It's my main tool right here. Got to get that little shim off. Right there. Ching. All right, don't embarrass me. Same with this one. Okay. So, depending on where you're at, this is going to need varying amounts of attention. And so this one, sucker's pretty clean. Don't really need anything. But if you're in a rusty area, like where I grew up, it's going to be a mess. So then the new shims will go on, nice and easy. By the way, you can't put them on backwards. If I were to try to put this one on, this has the wide opening. It won't fit. So one goes on one side, one goes on the other. They should sit pretty nice. And then we got to deal with lubing those. So what I personally do, this brake kit actually came with some lube. I'm going to use this lube here, caliper specific. I'm just going to, usually I like to shove the brush in there, but shoot, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to fit it. So what I may do is actually lube the guide pin. This step is missed a lot, but it's really important. So here's the guide pin. Paint it up. If it's already dirty, clean it up. These ones were clean though. Surprisingly, this truck's really not bad. But get those babies lubed up. Between that and the little shims that we just replaced, that's your main reasons for premature pad wear. Then I personally like to just do a little tiny grease on the main contact points, which are down there and down there. And we're mostly ready. I just got to get my coordination on because it's usually really easy. I would hang the caliper bracket, get the caliper bracket bolts in, pop the pads in, and then swing the caliper on. But remember, this one hits the leaf spring. So I've come up with my plan. It's going to be exactly opposite of how it came apart. I think it's going to go pretty smooth. I'm going to take the lower bolt, snuggie right up in there. I think you'll be able to see from here. Pretty sure. Not really going to be able to. Of course, the light's kind of blinding. But I'm going to hold it in place, snuggie up that lower bolt, or just get it started blindly. Okay. Let's get it roughly in there ish. Okay. And then I'm not going to start the upper bolt. I'm going to have my caliper guide pin ready. I'm going to bring the caliper down with no shoes, no pads. I'm going to start the bolt in the caliper, and I'm going to drop this down and make that upper bolt land. Or at least I'm trying to. Okay. That wasn't a failure because it was the first time. If I drop it again, I'm going to call myself a loser. Okay, so just kind of bring them in together. I also have no memory of this, to be honest with you. Now it's on his tongue. I can even start the threaded part of the guide pin. And do not put the other guide pin in because we have to be able to pivot the caliper. But now that I got that in, I can put the other caliper bracket bolt in. But man, with the light, I can't see crap. So let me find that sucker. I know I knocked it loose. I knocked it over. But gotta find it. All right, please hold. All right, I found it and got it started. Let's check this out. Here's what's gonna be the next step, according to me. So I've kept track of how my brake pads go. This is the outer pad, and it goes like this, because remember that squealer was facing us? So I'm gonna go with sliding these babies into place now. And I'm gonna do it without getting my head back there to block you. This one might be a little more tricky, but not that hard. Okay. Now, if I've got the caliper pistons compressed enough, this will pop right on. But it looks like they need a little more love. So I'm gonna use a couple things. You could use a C-clamp. That's probably what I would recommend. But I'm gonna finagle it. So I should have taken more time compressing those caliper pistons with that screwdriver, but I didn't, so I'm going to push them in another way. All right, so my way of compressing the piston caliper is really just this vice grip. It's, you know, that shape one. So it's not ideal. I should have been more thorough, might be. But the problem with these two piston ones is when you compress one, the other piston tends to pop out. So keep an eye on that. And then if you have to, you can bridge the two pistons with a pad, and then it won't pop out. But I'm gonna probably be able to make this work without too much drama. So I'm just gonna keep it rolling here. So that's what I'm up to. Look, I'll show you exactly what I mean. Watch me squeeze the left one. Moves the right one. But not quite as much as I got the left one down. So I think without bridging the two with a pad, I think I'll just keep working them a little bit and I'll get it. All right, I did get it, but this is what I meant by bridging it with a brake pad. So this will work as well. All right, I did find with enough finagling, you can actually get that bolt out. But normally, I wouldn't have had to bother. It was just because I had to compress the pistons. I worked a little more on it, and I was able to get them out. But I still have the big bracket bolts loose. So with the bracket bolts loose and some goofing around, you can get it for sure. So now I'm just getting this lower one in. And the upper one, kind of making sure I get them started. And once I feel like they're started, I'll switch over to the 18mm gear wrench again. Start running them in. I didn't actually get that one started right. All right, come on, sweetheart. So again, what I recommend, basically getting all these drawn up pretty tight, and then going through and doing the torque spec. Just have some way to not forget. You know, like some people will they'll do a mark when they torque it or whatever. I'm not gonna put this wheel on until everything in here in the back has been torqued. Although I haven't looked the specs up yet. So for now, about as tight as I can get it is going to be torqued. It's going to need to be tighter than that. Almost there. And then remember, those caliper bracket bolts that are 21s were really tight. So that was, I don't know, I'm pretty sure those things are like closer to 200, 180 foot-pounds or something ridiculous. So I'm going to snug them up and get the torque specs. We're close. Alright, so one challenge you're going to have, even if you get the torque specs, you're not going to be able to fit a torque wrench back there. So check this out. I'm telling you should, but if you double wrench it, and you're pretty strong upper body, you can get it pretty darn tight with just a wrench. That tight. And same on the top. In the event that you're unable to get the torque wrench in there, you can get it freaking tight. And also, Loctite is definitely what they use from the factory. So just letting you know, I worked on a bunch of trucks that were still, you know, they'd never been apart. So I can assure you the factories want to put the Loctite on them. Okay, we're getting there. All right, so I'm torqued. So I wanted to, hopefully that made sense. Took a lot of time. I'm even sweating slightly. But let's run through some of the tools you're going to need. Needle nose pliers, 18mm wrench, preferably a gear wrench is going to help you out. 21mm wrench. You could probably use a 13/16 for that. a pick, ideally a seal puller, but you might be able to do without it. I would really recommend a long, strong breaker bar with a 21 and an 18 socket. A nice, strong, long screwdriver, something to compress the caliper pistons in case you don't pry them enough. You really can't do this job without an impact gun. It's just, I mean, I guess you could, but it's just going to be a nightmare. An air hammer would be good, but if you can't, you know, a nice hammer with a drift, ideally a brass drift or something similar to what I used. Good lighting. And I got a mess on my hands here, but that's every tool I used to do this job. All fairly common tools, I feel like, minus maybe the air hammer. And that's it. Now again, for the parts, remember the parking brake shoes, the hub seal, the axle gasket, and probably rotors and pads, and some brake clean, and then possibly gear oil, and definitely some disc brake lube. Now, I'm not going to go through this with you because I really need to slam this job out. But when I'm done, I'm going to crack this square drive, use a 1/2-inch ratchet, crack that loose. Technically, you should have oil like right about here, just a hair below it. But if it were me, I would pretty much, you know, if you take that out and oil doesn't come out, I'd probably fill it so oil dribbles out of that hole. So hopefully that helps. It is labor though, and it's gonna make a mess, but from what I remember, I believe this job was probably 5 hours, 6 hours of flat rate time. So a typical shop's gonna be over $100 an hour. You're looking at probably $600 labor on the cheap end, probably more like $1,000 in the dealer. I think you could do the job. You got this. All right, slamming through this other side fast, but I forgot a little detail. This side shoe is actually more like upside down. Figures you can't see, but this one has the adjuster on the bottom, and you'd have to access it through the hole in the back, but on the bottom. So everything else is exactly the same, except just the way the shoe is upside down on this driver's side.